As you'd expect, it always starts with beautiful scenery, shortly followed by destruction. It starts with Howard Cooper, who looks a little bit down in the dumps. He's having to entertain kids for money, which is a bit sad, and you get the impression this isn't him in his prime. The party continues with its normal chatter, and then the news comes on, a bit of panic. The president's been moved somewhere, and there's unease whether there's going to be a next week. Next off, Cooper's chilling in the garden, and he sees the bombs. Yep, just sees the bombs blow up, puts his thumb up like the old classic Vault Boy picture, which means if it's bigger than your thumb, you're screwed. So what does he do? He grabs his daughter, hops on his horse and pegs it. Shortly after, it cuts to Lucy McLean in Vault 33. This is your typical Vault. It's based around agriculture and your normal Vault activities. It does highlight a few issues right in the beginning, that if there were any more inbred, there'd be a sandwich. Due to the short population, there's references to sleeping with cousins and all that shenanigans. So once a woman becomes of age, they get a breeder in from another Vault. Kind of like a arranged marriage, but this is for scientific purposes to make sure that you have a healthy population and no deformities. This is when it cuts to her dad, Hank, and they shortly discuss trading crops and other materials for a arranged marriage in Vault 32. This is when the dashing Monty arrives. Party kicks off, everything seems reasonable, apart from all the other guests from Vault 32 join Vault 33 for dinner, and they all seem a bit sus, like they got real bad table manners, and they don't seem to be the same breed of people as Vault 33. Lucy and Monty don't hang around, they go straight to the bedroom. This is when Lucy's Pip-Boy makes a weird radiation sound, which is kind of like a post-apocalypse Fitbit. At that point, she knows there's something off with him. Monty loses it and starts stabbing away. Lucy's combat trained, so she wins and heals herself with a stim pack. Meanwhile, the rest of the Vault is basically getting massacred. End of the battle, you basically find Moldava. She's a leader of the Raiders. Kidnaps Hank, and you get the impression she's going to be the main villain in the story. After Hank gets kidnapped, they all discuss what to do. Lucy goes, I don't care if you're coming with me, I'm leaving the Vault. And she tricks some Vault dwellers to let her out the front door. This is when we meet the Brotherhood of Steel. You're transported to an army base where they're all doing training to basically get promoted to be a scribe, which is someone who carries bags for the knights. You see Maximus training with his buddies. One of them gets promoted to be a scribe and then puts the foot in the shoe and there's a razor blade in there. Gets all cut up, so Maximus takes the place as the scribe. Everyone originally thought it was him, but after he gets interrogated by the elder, they decide, nah, you seem reasonable. I'll let you be the scribe. For Knight Titus, who you find out is a complete douchebag, and he gets him to clean his nut plate while they're on the ship. The mission is to find an Enclave scientist who has developed some technology they need to get their hands on. The Brotherhood of Steel wants to steal all the old world technology to be the most powerful force, because if it ends up in the hands of evil, bad things can happen, but they're pretty evil themselves. This is when you meet the crispy boy himself. You meet the Ghoul. It flicks to a clip of him basically being resurrected from a grave by 3 bandits who wants to hire him as a bounty hunter because of his reputation. As you can imagine, the Ghoul with his reputation, as soon as he pops out the coffin, he blasts them all and decides to take on the bounty himself, which is still the Enclave scientist. So now you get the impression there's going to be multiple people looking for the same guy. That concludes episode 1, which was named The End. Episode 2. Zaps over to the Enclave where you find Wazak, the scientist, and he is making a serum, and you get kind of an idea of what experiments they're up to. They're trying to breed combat dogs, and if they're under a certain weight or strength, they get incinerated. He's got a soft spot for one of the dogs, so he basically decides to keep him. Also, this is a reference to dog meat. We all know Dogmeat. He is your helpful companion throughout all of the Fallout games. 2 guards come in to see what he's up to, find out he's doing something he shouldn't be. Dogmeat attacks one of the guards, there's a massive fight. The scientist Wazag, he injects something into his head and plans his escape. Now we all know who everyone is chasing. Then it goes over to Lucy again, and her first glimpse of outside the vault. After a few minutes of seeing a desolate wasteland, Lucy sets up camp, makes a fire and goes for a nap. This is when he wakes up to Wilzig looming over her with dog meat, and they kill a radroach for her. He basically explains to her, listen, you need to toughen up if you're going to survive, but you're going to end up a monster if you toughen up. So catch-22, you're pretty much doomed either way. But I'm a good guy. But I'm also a bad guy. Welcome to the wasteland. This is when it goes back to Knight Tidus and Maximus in their vertibird. Once they land, they walk around the forest for a little bit and you get a bit of indication that Tidus treats Maximus like absolute dirt, which is expected. They stumble upon a cave which they find a Jaguar. They get destroyed. It gets all slashed up and eventually Mike Tidus is injured. Begs Maximus for help after giving him some sass. Maximus looks him in the eyes and goes, nah, you're better off dead. So he lets him die, steals his power armor, and then Maximus walks us into the sunset, feeling invigorated. It then cuts back to Lucy, who's walking through the wasteland. She meets an old crusty geezer who looks like a hillbilly and asks for directions. He points her to the local town of Philly and warns her it's going to be dangerous. She doesn't care, she goes anyway. Once Lucy is in the town, she goes to the local shop to ask for directions and a little bit of help. Once she's talking to the shopkeeper, who kind of just neglects her and treats her like some clown from the vault. What Lucy doesn't realise is the Ghouls already in the town and he's watching her activities. The shopkeeper then becomes very hostile when Lucy mentions Moldova and basically says, get out of my shop because you're going to cause trouble. On the way out of the shop, she bumps into Warzag. I always say his name wrong, I apologise. He has a little chat with Lucy and you discover that he knows all of her history and it freaks her out a little bit. And it also gives you an impression that not everything is what it seems. This is when the Ghoul makes his move. This is when you get a gauge of the Ghoul's combat abilities. He walks up to the scientist and kneecaps him, completely decimates his leg and starts firing with all the other people in the town. Because Cooper's got a bounty of 1,000 caps as well, you get a really impressive gunfight. Meanwhile, Lucy's in the shop, she grabs a gun off the shelf, tries to fight the Ghoul. Obviously, she is no match for him, and just before she gets annihilated, she is saved. Maximus comes bursting into the scene in his suit of power armor and makes a fool of himself. He fights the Ghoul, but because he's not trained in the power armor, the fight is really clunky and eventually he gets trapped by a plank of wood, gets all mashed up and zooms out of the area in his power armor. This actually allowed enough time for Lucy to go into the back of the shop. They give a metal foot for Wizag and they start their escape from Philly. In the fight, Howard actually stabbed the dog, but with a change of heart, also it's probably the best way to track the owner. He gives him a stim pack and shortly follows him across the desert. The journey across the desert ends in sadness. Wilzag is an old geezer and he's not up for the journey. So what does he say to Lucy? Joke's on you, I've just taken a suicide capsule and you need to chop my head off and take the head to Moldova. This is the only way the wasteland is going to have a happy ending. She goes, okie dokie, chops off his head and makes her way through the wasteland on her own. That is the end of episode 2, Surviving the Wild. Episode 3 starts off with Chet and Norm, the two vault dwellers from 33 that helped Lucy escape. Basically, they were up for punishment for letting her out the vault door. Although, all the raiders they captured are living a life of luxury, well, I wouldn't say luxury, but they're living a life in the prison system getting food. They decided Norm's punishment is to be the one to feed the prisoners. Kind of funny, kind of sad. Norm isn't even bad. Some of the leaders wants the raiders to be integrated into Vault society, but not everyone can agree. On top of that, they've got a vote due for the next overseer. It then flips over to Maximus outside Philly. A bunch of people try to basically scrap his power armor, but the power armor, because it's linked to Maximus' body, destroyed them all, which was nice. He missed a check-in for the Brotherhood of Steel, so now he has to pretend to be Knight Tidus. Maximus then goes and says, sorry for the delay, my squire was killed. Brotherhood goes, alright mate, we'll send you a new one. The new squire is dropped off, Thaddeus, Actually, it ended up being someone that Maximus hates, but he's really smart, and they try and track the ghoul by using radiation so they can track the scientist. They get to the scientist's dead body, and they realise, oh mate, they're taking his head. Now we've got a clear idea of what we need to get. However, the ghoul's already on the case. He's already discovered the body and on his way to track Lucy. Lucy's smart. She whips a tracker up the head's nose just in case she loses it. She goes to a lake and the head gets eaten by a gulper. Meanwhile, the ghoul, he's a bit low on his anti-ghoul medicine, so he decides to go sell Lucy for a bit of extra chems. Shortly before, the ghoul says thou shalt not get sidetracked by bullshit every goddamn time. He leaves the dog behind because it ain't his. The ghoul then sees a picture of himself as the iconic Vault Boy mascot. He gets mad and shoots it. Back at the lake, Maximus and Thaddeus turn up, all confused. They're on the trail and they find the gulper. They actually do manage to team up quite well and fight the gulper. At that point, he regurgitates everything, even Thaddeus, which he just recently ate, and they find the head. And this was confirmed because Dogmeat comes running up, licking the head. So now, the other group have the head, and it's a win-win. Back at the vault, you find out the water chip's broken, and they're all going to die of thirst eventually. And that concludes episode 3, The Head. Episode 4 starts with the ghoul dragging Lucy around the wasteland. They stumble upon a house and they go inside, and there we go, the ghoul finds another ghoul who he used to know in a previous time. This ghoul is a bit scatty, and he's starting to go feral. So after a brief conversation, he kills him. The ghoul kills the other ghoul and everyone's happy, except for Lucy. She looks mental. Throughout the whole conversation, you find out that they need this certain serum to stop themselves going feral, and it's quite hard to get hold of. You assume this is going to be the ghoul's next task to top up on these supplies. At this point, the ghoul decides to give Lucy a life lesson and tell about the harsh realities of the wasteland, and makes her chop up the ghoul and basically grab any scrap. He actually asks her name at this point, where she says Lucy McLean, and then he pauses like he recognises the name. And like all true Sigmas, his heart isn't on his sleeve, it's stuffed down in an irradiated layer of nothingness and betrayal. Lucy has a sip of irradiated water and does a little vomiting scene, and then they go to the super duper mark. But on the way, Lucy tries to escape and runs away from him. They have a little tussle, she bites off his finger, hilarious. He gets mad, says eye for an eye, and then cuts her finger off with a cold death stare. Well done. Presses on the intercom and says, can I trade you some chems for a semi-mint condition human? They say, yeah, no worries. They go in, there's a Mr. Handy. He looks at Lucy and goes, oh, you're missing a finger, love. Puts the finger back on, she sighs a sigh of relief and thinks, oh man, I'm so glad, I thought I was going to be a sex slave. He goes, joke's on you, I'm going to harvest your organs, get on the table, you're dead. And in John Wick form, she reverses it, attacks Mr. Handy, reprograms him, and walks him into the room where the two humans are sat, and basically says, you need to release all the prisoners you've got locked up in the fridges. Most of them are feral ghouls, so they're hesitant, but she convinces them anyway. Once the feral ghouls are released, they attack everyone. Pretty much everyone in the room dies except for Lucy. Interesting fact, you actually see one of these ghouls later in another episode, and she refers to Lucy as the one that saved her. And you can only see this if you got your subtitles on. Nice fact. This is the first time Lucy has to kill anyone. She picks up some Raider armor, pimps herself out, and she's full Gooner material now. When she walks outside, she actually has a heart, and she helps Cooper Howard by giving him some of the medicine. Cooper Howard goes into the super duper mart to rob him clean. He finds an old videotape of himself and sits down for a long session of nostalgia. Good time to relax, bro. We then go back to Norm, who's trying to investigate what's happening in Vault 32. He tries to attempt to log onto a computer, but access is denied. So what he decides to do to get a witness, he goes and finds Chet, who's recently got into a new relationship, and he wants a break from all the drama. So they head over to Vault 32. When they get inside, it's an absolute bloodbath. There's bodies everywhere. There's messages on the wall saying, we know what you did, and death to management. They're all blown away by this, but they try and investigate further. They end up logging onto the terminal of the Overseer, and they found out that access was granted from the outside. So someone opened the door with a Pip-Boy, and that was none other than his own mum. And that brings us to the episode number 4, The Ghouls. Episode number 5 starts back off in the Vault 32 with Norm. He's investigating the bloodbath there, trying to get some clues. On the way back to his vault, he's confronted by Betty to say, "Where have you been?" He gives some joke excuse like, we were just sort of going for a walk and we got lost, and she actually kind of bought it. Betty was currently distracted because it's election day for the new Vault Overseer. So you've got Betty, Woody and Reg. While they were casting their votes, Norm hacked onto her computer and was having a little peep around to see if he can find any information. That's when they come across some information that links into one of their common phrases. When things look glum, vote 31. This is when he discovered that all the overseers from all the votes 31, 2 and 3 were all originally from vote 31. His brain clicks and he goes, "Wait, I know someone from Vault 31. Chet's currently dating Steph. She's abroad with the eye patch now from after the Raider battle." When they confront her and ask her what's so good about Vault 31, her only response is, "The mashed potato was better." But she does look sheepish, like she's hiding something. It goes back to Betty and you can see her true colours. You see what a rad roach she is. Obviously she wins the election by a landslide and holds a meeting. Basically tells everyone, we need to repopulate Vault 32. They were devastated by the Raiders and their population's low. So we're going to do a ballot and most of you are going to go there. Norm and Chet were like, "Bro, it's an absolute catastrophe there. You surely can't repopulate that." So as they're all going to go to Vault 32, as soon as the doors open, it's all clean. There's no bodies, no blood on the walls. Norm walks up to the side, has a little look, and you can see everything's been freshly painted. They make their way to the Overseer's office to have another look around, and it's all the same there, fully cleaned up. This is when Betty walks up to Norm, death stares him dead in the eyes and goes, "You find what you're looking for, buddy?" So it's fully implied that she knows exactly what's going on. He turns to her and says, "Well, you've obviously done a good job cleaning up." This is when he had the common sense to ask her, "Wait a minute, when my mum died, where's her Pip-Boy?" Betty confirmed she was the one who helped bury her, and it's been buried with her. We all know this is a lie at this point. We then go over to Lucy, and she discovers a suit of power armor being attacked by radroaches. She pops their head off and has a look. Oh no, it's Maximus inside. She doesn't really recognise him at this point. She didn't see his face in Philly. She asks what's going on, and then it clips to a flashback. You find out how Maximus got himself trapped in his own suit of power armor. As you'd expect, Maximus and Thaddeus had to camp every evening. So while they were sat around the campfire and they were getting on actually quite well, Maximus had a moment of stupidity and said, "You know what, I'm going to be honest with you and reveal my true identity because we've got on so well." He popped his visor and explained to Thaddeus that Titus died and he took the suit of armor. It was the best thing to do in the situation. Thaddeus, at this point, made it very obvious he was going to grass him up and he didn't support his decisions. Maximus caught wind of this and attacked him. Like, he went berserk. He was trying to smash him up. He did actually manage to get a couple of good hits in and smashed his leg around. Thaddeus, being more smart than he is strong, evaded a couple of hits and disengaged the power armor from behind with the core. And now he's trapped. Maximus is trapped. He can't move. Thaddeus grabbed the head, grabbed all the bags and was like, "See you later, mate. I'm going to go take this in and get all the credit for it." We then go back to Maximus and Lucy, where he does your normal routine and begs for his life and says, "I will help you. You can't do this on your own. By the way, you're dying of radiation sickness. I've got a cheeky little pouch of right away in my pocket, and if you don't let me out, you're gonna die." She agrees. She lets him out. He saves her. So, he kept his word. They cut themselves a deal. Lucy says, "Maximus, you can have the head if you agree to lend me some Brotherhood support and go free my dad from Moldova." They agree, even though he has no intention of keeping this promise, and because he's not even a knight. So, well played, sir. Well played. They then later walk. At this point, Maximus isn't wearing his power armor. They're just walking along the road. They bump into a couple of strangers on a bridge. This is when you see Lucy's true ignorance. She doesn't know what's going on, and she's like, "You should trust these guys. They seem genuine." Maximus, obviously more common sense in the wasteland, they decide to both put their hands up and shuffle past each other. After they both claimed they haven't got weapons, these guys ended up being, I think they were meant to be like fiends or raiders. They definitely got like those saggy eyes and they look a bit mental. And obviously, as you'd expect, when they got level with each other, there's a confrontation and a shootout. Luckily, Lucy and Maximus survive. They continue on their journey. Lucy comes across a billboard for Shady Sands, and it said repopulation 2124, something like that. So it was very obvious that Shady Sands has been repopulated since the Great War. This makes her confused because the whole point of her vault is to repopulate the surface when it becomes safe. But this has already been done. Maximus goes, chill out, look, there's no drama, everything was destroyed anyway, so it didn't work, maybe you're a backup plan. Lucy said, well, I hope this is okay. I guess so. I hope someone survived from this town though. Maximus goes, yeah, me. This is when you get a first indication that his storyline is actually a lot deeper than you were shown so far. Lucy notices Maximus is struggling with the bullet shot he picked up from the battle on the bridge with the fiends, so they decide to go cure him before they continue. They decide to look for medication in the Hawthorne laboratories. Maximus is apprehensive to go inside. Lucy goes in anyway. Once Maximus enters, there's nowhere to be seen. She's gone. Lucy's disappeared. Once Maximus enters, Lucy's disappeared, so he carries on his journey. Opens a door which says medical supplies. He goes through. It locks at both ends. An alarm goes off and he falls down a chute. When he gets to the bottom, Lucy's there looking all happy. He goes, where are we? She turns around a woman with bright eyes and her uplifting vault spirit and goes, we're in the best place ever, Maximus. We're in a vault. And that brought us to the end of the episode, number 5, The Past. Episode 6 starts quite nicely. Maximus and Lucy are in the vault and they're getting all their wounds tended to. They meet someone called Birdie who's like a council member and she's really friendly. She tells Maximus that they're going to go collect the power armor, they're going to sort all their wounds out. Yeah, Vault 4 seems suspiciously kind. Kind of like cult kind. While in the medical bay in quarantine, Lucy asks Maximus if they want to schmoosh booties. He's quite awkward and just says, I'm a knight, it's probably against my duty, so I don't know why I bottled this one. Nice opportunity. While they're enjoying a meal in the vault, Maximus' feathers are still ruffled and he's very suspicious. Lucy says, look, I want to stay here, let's see how the vault works and just have a good time. Maximus kind of wants to get out of here. You find out as well that a lot of the inhabitants are from Shady Sands and not from the original Vault 4. This is when the overseer of the vault, Benjamin, introduces himself to Lucy and Maximus, and he is a Cyclops. This throws them both off their scent, and they just end up staring at him. Benjamin continues to carry on talking like nothing's actually happened or nothing's wrong with that big old eye in the middle of his face. He basically says, here are the rules, there are no rules, the only rule is stay off level 12. And didn't really give an explanation why. Maximus and Lucy look around and realise everyone in the vault are freaks and they've got like defects to their face and body, and now they're a little bit suspicious. Lucy later tries for an overseer bonding session and it didn't really go well. She tried to inquire about the vault and get some information out of him. As soon as she asks what happens on level 12, Benjamin flips out and kicks her out the room. Meanwhile, Maximus has taken advantage of people's friendly nature. He walked around the vault and he found his power armor. He asked someone who worked there, hey bro, how'd you get your power? And he goes, here, let me show you. Here's our power core. And then you put one and one together and Maximus realised if he puts the power core in a suit, he can escape. Maximus was just about to slide this little baddie out and then he was caught by Birdie. And do you know what she says? She knows how to manipulate a man. She went, hey bro, here's a room, here's a Pip-Boy. You go relax, get a taste for the vault life. The next few clips of Maximus is just him indulging. He's enjoying his robe in his nice room. He's eating deviled eggs, yum-yums. Oh man, he's having the best time and he forgets about all his troubles. Yeah, he got trapped. He got trapped by comfort. Lucy's walking around the vault as well and she discovers a classroom that has a timeline of what happened in Shady Sands. This is when you see the first reference of the NCR. There's a massive New California Republic flag in the classroom. She has a little touch of it, but she doesn't know what it is, and she walks away. Next up, you see a bunch of Vault Dwellers walking in one direction. Lucy goes, hey, what's going on, guys? They said, follow, we've got a ceremony. He gets a bit carried away, but it's a good fun tradition we have. Lucy follows. It looks like your typical cult ritual. Everyone's like having a good time and chanting. People are stripping off. And they're talking about bringing back the dead and bringing back the dead from Shady Sands, remembering those who we lost, those sort of shenanigans. Then they start drinking cups of blood and praying for Moldova. Lucy, hysterical well, I wouldn't say hysterical, but Lucy, agitated at this point, goes and finds Maximus to say, listen, bro, we need to leave. We're in a cult. There's something off with these guys. Unfortunately, Maximus has come well accustomed to his new lifestyle and he doesn't want to leave. He's enjoying his eggs, he's enjoying his snacks, he wants sugar bombs, he doesn't want any drama. At this point, Lucy knows the only way to get Maximus out of the vault is to find some evidence, so she goes off to floor 12 to see what shenanigans are going on that floor. What does Lucy find on floor 12? Well, basically a scene from Aliens. Lots of bodies, lots of parts of bodies in tubes. Some of the people are frozen and some of the people are like embalmed in water, and you can tell there has been human experiments going on this floor. Lucy then gets caught, a brief exchange of words with Birdie saying, you're all a bunch of freaks, and then Birdie responds, well, I'm sure your vault has its own dramas, and she is taken away. End scene. We then go over to Cooper Howard to see what his life was like before he got ghouled. It's then shown to you that Howard Cooper, it was made known that he fought against communism in Alaska and he's basically being used as a spokesperson, which has caused some problems in getting employment elsewhere, and this kind of projected his image to be a man against communism, kind of like the Ronald McDonald of the end of the world. Cooper's chilling at a party later and he meets Sebastian Leslie, an old friend of his, and you soon discover that he is the voice of Codsworth and all of the Mr. Handys. I mean, if you didn't recognise his voice already, he later goes on to say that he's been doing a cool voice acting gig for Robco Industries. Leslie reassures him that a guy's got to make money. He says, who cares if you're the spokesperson of communism? I'm the spokesperson of Mr. Handy. It doesn't even matter. A job's a job, bro. Relax. They're later talking about one of their wartime buddies to say, oh, did you know he's a communist now? And Cooper Howard's like, surely this can't be. I fought alongside this guy in Alaska. So he goes and meets the guy. His old wartime buddy explains that he's not a communist, but he's against big corporations like Vault-Tec because he knows a little bit of information about all the corrupt activities they get up to. Cooper's obviously very hesitant, but his friend later explains to him, look, listen, here's my business card, come to one of our meetings. I want you to have a true understanding of what happens at Vault-Tec and these big corporations. They obviously want to keep these wars going because they're profitable for them, and if they had the cure to stop any of this war and destruction, they wouldn't do it because they want to keep the war going, they want to keep people scared, and they want to keep making money. If you don't believe me, you should start looking into your wife, and maybe you'll find out what Vault-Tec's true intentions are. Curiosity got the better of Cooper, and he went to go to one of these meetings. And who's running the meeting? None other than Lee Moldova. They have a brief exchange, and then it cuts back to present time with the ghoul, and he is being hassled by some people basically pretending to be the local sheriffs in a super duper mart. They took the ghoul to their headquarters, or basically like the police station, having a brief exchange, talking about, look, who is this Moldova? What's going on? She's called like the Flame Mother. The ghoul was trying to get some information out of this guy, saying, look, who is this Moldova we're chasing? Who's the Flame Mother? Blah, blah, blah. He says, look, you need to stay away from her. She's bad news. She might be too dangerous for you. At that point, he says to Cooper, look, I'm really sorry, mate, but I'm not actually letting you leave because I've captured you now. Ghoul has a little smirk on his face, kills everyone in the room except for the guy who was interviewing him. The ghoul was looking around the room while he just popped 2 gunshots in the guy in front of him, and he notices a wanted poster of a woman, and he says to the guy who captured him, hey, who's this woman? Why is she on your wall? And he turned around to him and said, well, that's Moldova. That's when he realised he knew exactly who this Lee Moldova was. She was part of the alleged communism group that tried to convince him that Vault-Tec was bad. And then this brings us to the end of the episode. And this brings us to the end of episode 6, The Trap. This episode starts with Cooper Howard back talking to Moldova in the past. They're discussing the legitimacy of Vault-Tec and their shady experiments. Moldova explains that she was part of a research group that was trying to make cold fusion reactors, which would give infinite power to basically everyone in the world. They pretty much made this technology work, and then when this was presented out, Vault-Tec basically bought the corporation and hid any knowledge of this experiment so it wouldn't be released. This invention would have stopped the resource war and probably made peace in the whole of the new world. But Vault-Tec kept this a secret, and resume control, prolonging the Great War. Moldova then explains this is how she knows Cooper Howard's wife and suggested, here's a listening device. Please, can you investigate your wife so you know that she is up to no good, and it will give us all confirmation on Vault-Tec's devious acts, and hopefully we can get this sorted before it escalates any further. He refuses, but she says, look, just take it, just in case, your curiosity gets the better of you and you investigate. This is when the ghoul in present day decides he wants to find Moldova, and she's hiding out at the conservatory, and he decides, I'm going to go there and find out what the business is and see if she remembers me. On the way, he actually finds dog meat in a red rocket in like a crate, which was left. Dog meat was left there by Thaddeus. Dog meat was following Thaddeus because he had the scientist, which was his former owner's head, on him, and he managed to pick up the scent and he wouldn't leave Thaddeus alone. So Thaddeus tricked him in this crate and left him there just for a bit of peace. Thaddeus' foot is all banged up and mangled from the battle with Maximus earlier. So on his travels, he finds a salesman who presents himself as a doctor and goes, you know what, bro, I can cure any ailments you want for a nominal fee. The only thing of value Thaddeus has to change is the fusion core he stole from Maximus' power armor. So he trades that for a serum, which he stabs into himself, and boom, just like that, instantly heals his mangled foot, and he's alright to carry on his journey. Thaddeus decides, right, the best course of action is he's going to go to a radio station and broadcast to the Brotherhood of Steel where he is and let them know he's got the head, tell them about Maximus, call for a rescue. He gets to the radio station, which is highly booby-trapped, so he does like a little dance to get through, which is quite good. Thaddeus is just chilling outside the radio station, waiting for backup to be sent. This then smartly transitions over to Maximus, still in his robe, enjoying TV and snacks in Vault 4. He has no idea that Lucy is still in custody with the overseer of One Eye, what's his name, Benjamin, and the female executive, Birdie. Lucy finally has the chance to confront these two and say, look, you're doing horrible experiments, please tell me what's going on. They explain to her she is gravely mistaken. Originally, the vault was set up to trap outsiders and use them for experimentation, but as the years gone on, people from outside the vault rebelled, took over, and they formed kind of a new vault community where they decided that they're not going to do any more vault experiments. However, the people that were originally experimented on are being kept in the room for safety until they can figure out a way to either save them or maybe give up at some point and dispose of them. But this is a new Vault community where they don't do any horrible acts, and all the mutations on the Vault dwellers are just from previous experiments which they have nothing to do with. Benjamin tries to get some information from Lucy to say, look, all Vaults have experiments, what was yours? She was none the wiser, saying mine was a wholesome Vault. This is when Vault 4 makes another stupid decision. They say, you know what, Lucy, we're going to punish you because of what you've done to our vault, and we told you not to go into floor 12. So they take her off for sentencing. On the way, they walk past Maximus' room. Maximus sees her being escorted off by vault security. So he decides, this is no good, there's going to be drama. He goes and steals a fusion core, gets into a suit of power armor, dives into the room and starts bashing people up. Meanwhile, Lucy was there, and her actual punishment she was going to receive, even though it looked like she was going to be executed, it was just exile. They were going to chop her handcuffs off, give her some supplies, and send her out of the wasteland. So in between Maximus bashing people up in his suit of power armor, Lucy stops him, they have a brief exchange, the Vault ejects them both, gives them some supplies, and they're on their merry way. Lucy realises Maximus stole the fusion core, which means the Vault would die without it. With a high charisma check, she persuades him to leave the power armor where they are and give them back the fusion core. He agrees. She's a bit big-eyed about it and goes, "You're a real nice guy. How about when all this is over, you can come live happily ever after in the vault with me?" Which is nice. This point in the story, Maximus comes clean about his role in the Brotherhood of Steel and how he got the power armor from Titus. Lucy goes, "It doesn't matter what you've done in the past, you seem like a genuine guy. I really want to live with you in Vault 33. Maximus is taken aback from Lucy's generosity and obviously agrees. Who wouldn't? Goontown for everyone. Another clever jump. This is when it goes back to Norm in Vault 33. You're over at the dining area where the raiders were being kept prisoner, and it looks like someone's done some Vault justice and poisoned a whole bunch of them. It does look like Norm is the culprit, but you don't really find any evidence for it. It's just sort of led that he's the only one who has a vendetta against them. The drama continues with Betty, who is deciding which people are going to Vault 32 for the repopulation and which ones are staying in Vault 33. Unfortunately, Norm's buddy Chet and his new girlfriend Stephanie are one of the groups that are going to Vault 32, which is sad. So Norm goes and confronts him to say, "Look, bro, you're going to the Vault. You know what we saw there. They got murdered. There's something going on. Please grow some nuts and do something about it." He calls him a coward, and Chet goes, "Yeah, I am a coward. We all are. We're Vault people. This is just how it is." Everyone gets lined up outside the Vault. Betty announces that Stephanie is going to be the new overseer, and of course we all saw this coming because when things look glum, pick someone from Vault 31, which Stephanie was from. Norm, being the only one in the Vault who has any common sense and some fighting drive to find the truth, he goes onto Betty's computer and starts causing some drama. He messages the overseer from Vault 31 saying, "Mission's not going well, can you please report in?" The overseer replies and Norm suggests that they should meet. The Vault 31 overseer agrees and Norm goes over to the vault and luckily it pops open as soon as he's standing outside the door. This then cuts over back to Maximus and Lucy. They've made their way to the radio station following the tracker they put in the head of the scientist. They have a brief exchange with Thaddeus, trying to convince him about the truth and what he should do. Thaddeus is having none of it, so he comes out blasting. He has low perception and he misses every single shot. Meanwhile, a booby trap goes off and an arrow gets shot right into his neck, but he doesn't die. That means the serum he was given from the doctor / snake oil salesman / spiv / snake was in fact a serum that turned him into a ghoul. Maximus explains to him that wounds shouldn't heal and you're definitely a ghoul. Thaddeus, looking dumbstruck, makes the connection himself. However, during this exchange, the Brotherhood of Steel are flying in with a couple of vertibirds to save the day. Thinking quick, Thaddeus is left with no choice because of the Brotherhood of Steel's reputation towards ghouls and they would just kill him on sight. Maximus manages to convince him, "Look, if you give me the head, Thaddeus, you can run. I'll hand the head in. No sweat, bro. We're all sweet." Thaddeus goes, "I don't really have much of a choice," and he darts off into the woods. Maximus, being the kind-hearted guy he is, gives the real head to Lucy and says, "Use this to find your father. I'm going to grab a head from around here and give this to the Brotherhood of Steel. They're not going to know any wiser, so job done." And this is the moment we've all been waiting for. She says to Maximus, "Look, come find me when this is all over at Vault 33 and I'll be yours." They exchange in a really heartfelt romantic kiss, and that was the end of the episode number 7, The Radio. At the start of this episode, you see Maximus back at the Brotherhood of Steel. You assume that they collected him with the vertibirds from the last episode and made their way back to camp. Back at the Brotherhood, you've got Alder Quintus, Maximus, and next to him Dane and a bunch of Brotherhood of Steel. They're kind of interrogating him on like a little podium. First thing he asks is, "Where's Knight Titus?" Maximus explains that he died in combat. This doesn't start the interrogation well. He then later gives the head, which is shortly discovered that this is a fake. At which point, Alder Quintus throws the head at him and basically you assume he's going to get executed. Maximus is pleading, saying he can take you to the real head. And this is when Dane confronts Quintus and says, "Look, the accident was nothing to do with Maximus, with the old cut up foot. It was all me. Please listen to him." Later, they take him back into a personal room with just like a few of them. And Quintus interrogates Maximus, saying, "Look, how did Titus die?" Maximus explains that Well, we are going into a cave and he's a coward. He doesn't represent the Brotherhood of Steel. Quintus actually agrees with this and saying we used to take things through force and we weren't as weak as we are now. This shortly leads into a Braveheart type speech where Outer Quintus explains that the Brotherhood used to be a force to be reckoned with. We used to take things and not get taken from. You'll be my sword and I'll be the brains. We will reform this wasteland. Maximus, obviously no other chance for survival, goes, "You're right. I'll lead you to the head. We can reclaim the wasteland." Before they head into their vertebrates towards the conservatory, Maximus and Dane have a little conversation where she apologizes for cutting her foot up because she was scared to leave the comfort of the Brotherhood of Steel, and that's why she did it. But Maximus was like, it's all cool. Best thing ever happened to me. I met a girl, we had a nice time, and once this is all over, we're going to go live safely in her vault together. No beef, no chicken, no squash. However, they're not the only ones on their way to the conservatory. The Ghoul is. And on the way, you are slapped with more backstory on Cooper Howard. It goes back into the past where he finally agreed. Well, he didn't agree, he just decided to do it to spy in on his wife to see what she was up to at Vault-Tec. So he planted the listening devices. He's outside going around the car park and he's confronted by someone called Bud Askins. And he's important later, so remember that name. Bud Askins was yapping away at Cooper Howard and he wasn't really listening, but he did let something drop about a new program they were starting called Bud, which is basically, it was a program where they would make the executives of Vault-Tec live for centuries and centuries so they can carry on the work that they wouldn't be able to do in their lifetime. Cooper, currently dying of boredom in his car, realised he needed to get closer to the building because the transmitter with the listening device in his ear was starting to get a bit fuzzy, so he decided to go into the Vault-Tec building, get a little bit closer and pretend he's waiting for his wife to finish her meeting. Meanwhile, when he was in the building, the secretary approached him and said, "Do you know what? There's someone here who wants to see you. He's a real big fan of you." And who is this executive? Well, it's none other than Hank McClane. This encounter is a little bit uncomfortable because Cooper Howard is trying to listen to the conversation with his wife through an earpiece whilst trying to maintain his cool talking to Hank. There is actually one key bit of information he heard his wife say herself, which is, there is one way we can guarantee results, and that is if Vault-Tec launches the bombs themselves so we can gain control of the wasteland afterwards. Woo! This is now confirmation everything Lee Moldova said was true, that his wife was part of the end of the world, or going to be end of the world. Hasn't dropped yet, but it's going to. This snaps back to Norm, who enters Vault 31. While he was in there, he noticed the vault was completely deserted. There's pretty much nothing going on. He went down a corridor and there was like a robo-brain bashing into a box and he was trapped. Once he released him, he carried on to the main chamber. In the main chamber, he discovered there's basically loads of tanks with people frozen inside, like cryopods. I'm pretty sure at this point he realised they're cryopods. Norm makes a connection that the talking robo-brain is none other than the overseer of Vault 31, who is also Bob Askins. This is his project Bud in fruition, and you can see it's an obvious success. Norm and the robo-brain have a really in-depth conversation to try and figure out what the hell's going on. This is when you finally find out the experiment of Vault 31, which is to keep all of the Vault-Tec employees alive after the bombs fell so they can release them as they see fit. Each one of these executives has a chance to be overseer in Vault 33 and Vault 32. Norm was confused at this point and was like, so what is the point of Vault 32 and 3? Like, I'm a bit confused. You've got all the executives here, so why do you need the other vaults? The Robo-Brain, aka Bob Askins, explains that we are here to try and create a manager super race, and that's the only point of the vault, just to breed and breed and breed, to try and create more leaders for the new world. And these new managers will wipe the surface clean of anything bad. Norm at this point has heard enough and he tries to leave the vault. The Robo-Brain shuts the door, locks him in and says, "You know too much, you can't leave." Norm was like, "So you're basically going to kill me, yeah?" The Robo-Brain explains, "If I was in your situation, I would hop in your dad's cryopod and survive, because there's no food here, and I'm not letting you out until it's safe to leave the vault, which might be in a few hundred years. So your only option is to get into Hank's tank, or you're going to starve to death." This now brings us to Lucy, who walks into the conservatory. You see a lot of settlers trying to live a peaceful life. You've got ghouls, and it seems like a nice community. This is where you see one of the ghouls she released from the Super Duper Mart a few episodes back, and she kind of gestures to her to be like, yeah, this is the one that saved me. Nice touch. Once in the room, you've got Hank in a cage, you've got Moldova sat at a table, and you've got a charred up ghoul. Lucy passes the head to Moldova and says, look, I'm here now, give me my dad back. And after a brief exchange, Moldova was like, look, while you're here, let me explain to you how I know your dad. I've known him for a long time. Lucy, thinking, well, I come all this way, I might as find out if he's up to anything sneaky. Moldova makes it very clear to Lucy, your dad's a liar and a snake. I knew him before the bombs dropped, and I actually knew your mother. Your mother was real nice. At this point, she takes the artifact out of the head and starts tinkering over at the other side of the room. So how it all started is Hank was living down in the vault with Lucy's mum. Everything was going good. However, she was a little bit more intelligent than the average vault dweller. She discovered that something was siphoning the water from the vault. And at this point, she realised, well, only a human could do that. So there must be civilization up outside the vault. When she confronted Hank about this, he disagreed and said, you're a liar, you need to keep it quiet. She was so convinced she actually left the vault and discovered a place called Shady Sands, and she took her 2 kids with her, Lucy and Norm. They found it was a really nice community, everything was going well. They lived there happily ever after. This is also a place where Maximus was chilling out as a kid. Hank, in his diabolical rage, decided that he was going to grab his kids back, so he did. He went into Shady Sands, took his kids back, and then decided the only way to stop this happening again is to completely annihilate Shady Sands. And that's what he done. He burned it to the ground. And when they previously went to Shady Sands, you can see the impact from the blasts. Lucy is absolutely devastated at this point, and then she asked, why have you kept my dad alive? He's obviously a monster. She was explaining, this cold fusion core I've got from the head, I need a Vault-Tec executive to put in a code. And your dad is a Vault-Tec executive, so I need his code to make the technology work. Can you please help? Lucy is considering to help Moldova at this point, but she's got one more question to ask. She goes, touching story, but where's my mother? What happened to her? And this is when the crispy ghoul at the table starts making some like crusty gurgling noises. At this point, Lucy makes the connection of why the ghouls at the table, and she soon realises that is actually her mum. How horrific. At this point, she is torn up with sadness and anger at the same time, and basically convinces Hank, punch in the code, you're a monster, you've done enough damage. Hank, sobbing away, tries to convince her otherwise, but eventually gives in, and then he puts the code into the cold fusion reactor, making it available to use. Everyone's happy, but there's also tears all round. Just as the conversation comes to an end, a siren goes off, which means there's attack. The Brotherhood of Steel and the vertebrates come smashing in, and there's a really nice battle. You see people from the settlement running with the NCR flags, fighting off the Brotherhood of Steel. Obviously, they're outnumbered and outmanned and outpowered. Most of these guys get absolutely annihilated by the Brotherhood of Steel. At which point, Maximus sneaks through the main army and tries not to fight anyone, and then he gets to the room with Hank and Lucy in, and then immediately lets Hank out of the cage because he doesn't know any better at this point. Maximus and Lucy were having a conversation saying, you know what, you shouldn't have let my dad out of that cage. He's actually the villain, and he was the one who destroyed Shady Sands. For some reason, they decided to both take their eyes off him. Meanwhile, Hank snuck to the back of the room, managed to get into a full suit of power armor. Maximus now decided he wants to attack Hank and went for him. Maximus immediately got swatted away like a little fly because he's not in power armor. Lucy points a gun up to Hank's head. Hank knows Lucy's not going to shoot him, so he just kind of ignores her. However, this is when Cooper Howard sneaks into the room. The ghoul, the man, the myth. He comes in. He doesn't care about Hank. He looks him dead in the eyes and pops some shots at him. None of these shots are fatal. Actually, one was pretty nice. Shot like some of his cheek off. This is when he explains, after I heard your name, I knew who you were because I've met you before. So now, can you please explain to me, where the hell is my family? In all the commotion, Hank backs off and flies off into the distance in a power armor and his jetpack. Lucy, livid at this point, says, why didn't you shoot Hank? He's obviously a monster. And the ghoul explains, it's easier to track a wounded animal than try and get the truth out of someone who's dead. They have a brief exchange, and the ghoul then explains to Lucy, the best thing you can do right now is follow me. This whole building is going to get destroyed by the Brotherhood, and you want to know the full extent of Voltec's misery, and you want to hunt your dad down. So let's team up and go track him down. Or you can stay here and die. Lucy decides to team up with the ghoul at this point, and they make their way out. She goes to say goodbye to Maximus, but he's unconscious at this point, so not a lot of words are spoken. When Lucy and the ghoul go out the back and leave, and in the distance you see none other than New Vegas. Not gonna lie, I did cream a little bit when I saw this in the background. If we ever meet Victor, my life is complete. Some time passes and Maximus wakes up on the floor in the conservatory room all on his own. He's a little bit confused, but he obviously knows some battles have taken place and Lucy and the ghoul aren't here anymore. Nor is Hank actually. While he's there, Lee Moldova goes muddling over and makes the cold fusion reactor work, and then all of the lights go on, and it's quite a magical experience. Lee, knowing that she's going to die, has a brief conversation with Maximus saying, this is what I've made, unlimited power. What would the Brotherhood do with unlimited power? Would they make the world a better place, or would they destroy it? That's kind of down to you, Maximus. It's your decision. And then she dies. Dane then later comes into the room and sees Moldova on the floor and Maximus standing over her. She assumes that Maximus killed her, so she proclaims, you know what, let's make him a knight, Knight Maximus, and everyone cheers, no one disagrees. Maximus kind of just stares into the middle distance, still shocked about what's happened. So at this point, Maximus has become the champion of the Brotherhood from doing little to no work. And he's just handed the Brotherhood probably one of the most powerful weapons he could have. And the scene finishes with Dane holding up one of Maximus' arms, and they're all cheering for Knight Maximus. You know what? Really nice end. Really good series. I'm happy.